Have you ever felt that sudden panic when someone takes too long to reply? That tight feeling in your chest when a friend cancels plans? Or that quiet, haunting thought that one day the people you love will simply leave? And even when nothing is wrong, you still feel it. That fear, that ache, that dread of being left behind. If that sounds familiar, you're not dramatic, you're not needy, and you're definitely not alone. The fear of abandonment is something many people carry silently. It can show up in relationships, friendships, even at work. It can make you overthink small changes in tone. It can make you cling tighter. Or sometimes it can make you push people away before they get the chance to leave you. You might not realize this, but the fear of abandonment isn't really about other people leaving. It's about what leaving means to you. For some, it means rejection. For others, it means being unworthy. For many, it means being alone with feelings they don't know how to handle. Here's what psychology says. Humans are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, we depend on caregivers, not just for food and shelter, but for safety and emotional regulation. When a baby cries and someone comes, their nervous system learns, I am safe. Someone is there. But when responses are inconsistent, unpredictable, or absent, the nervous system learns something else. It learns that connection can disappear. Studies suggest that early attachment experiences shape how we approach relationships later in life. If love felt secure and consistent, you may grow up feeling relatively safe in relationships. But if love felt unstable, conditional, or suddenly withdrawn, you may grow up bracing for loss. That bracing can look like anxiety. It can look like hyperness. It can look like constantly scanning for signs that someone is pulling away. Imagine this. You send a message to someone you care about. Hours pass. You check your phone again and again. Your mind starts filling in the blanks. They're annoyed. I said something wrong. They're losing interest. Your heart starts racing. Your stomach tightens. Logically, you might know they're probably just busy. But emotionally, it feels like something is slipping away. That's not weakness. That's your nervous system reacting to perceived threat. You might not realize this, but fear of abandonment often has very little to do with the present moment. It's often an echo from the past. Maybe you experienced a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe someone important left suddenly. Maybe affection was inconsistent, warm one day, distant the next. Even experiences like being bullied, excluded, or betrayed by friends can leave a deep imprint. When abandonment happens, especially early on, the brain links connection with danger. It quietly creates a rule. Don't get too comfortable. People leave. So later in life, even healthy relationships can trigger that old alarm. There are different ways people cope with this fear. Some become clingy, needing constant reassurance. They might overtext, over-explain, over-apologize. They may sacrifice their own needs to keep someone close. They may feel devastated by small shifts in attention. Others go the opposite direction. They keep emotional distance. They avoid getting too attached. They leave first. They tell themselves they don't need anyone. But underneath that, independence is often the same fear. If I let someone matter too much, it will hurt when they leave. You might not realize this, but both behaviors come from the same root. Protection. Here's what psychology says about attachment styles. People with anxious attachment often fear abandonment deeply. They crave closeness but fear losing it. People with avoidant attachment also fear abandonment, but instead of clinging, they create distance to avoid the pain. Both are strategies your brain learned to survive. And survival strategies are powerful. They don't disappear just because you grow up. Sometimes fear of abandonment can show up as jealousy. You might feel threatened when your partner spends time with others, or you may feel uneasy when a friend becomes close to someone new. It's not that you don't want them to have other relationships. It's that your mind whispers, what if I'm being replaced? Replacement feels like erasure. Like proof that you weren't enough. You might not say these thoughts out loud. You might even feel ashamed of them. But inside, they feel very real. Studies suggest that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. That's why abandonment doesn't just hurt emotionally, it can hurt physically. It can feel like a punch to the chest, a hollow drop in your stomach, a wave of heat and panic. And if you've been abandoned before, your brain becomes extra sensitive to signs it might happen again. You might start testing people without realizing it, pulling away to see if they chase, starting arguments to see if they stay, needing constant reassurance, or shutting down when you feel insecure. These behaviors aren't about manipulation, they're about fear. But here's the hard part. The very behaviors we use to prevent abandonment can sometimes push people away. When someone feels constantly tested or mistrusted, they may feel exhausted. When someone feels shut out, they may feel disconnected. And when that distance grows, it can confirm your deepest fear. It becomes a painful cycle. But this is where the deeper insight comes in. And when that distance grows, it can confirm your deepest fear. It becomes a painful cycle. But this is where the deeper insight comes in. The fear of abandonment is rarely just about losing someone else. It's often about losing yourself. When your sense of worth depends entirely on someone staying, their presence becomes your emotional anchor, and their absence feels like you are drifting without direction. You might not realize this, but underneath the fear of being left is often a belief like, if they leave, it means I'm unlovable. Or if they don't choose me, I must not be enough. Here's what psychology says. When we tie our identity too tightly to external validation, we become fragile in relationships. Not because we are weak, but because our foundation is outside of us. If love equals proof of worth, then any distance feels like proof of failure. But what if love isn't proof of your worth? What if your worth is constant, even when someone chooses differently? This shift can feel uncomfortable, because it means letting go of the idea that someone else is responsible for making you feel secure. Security starts inside. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become distant. It means you begin building a relationship with yourself that doesn't collapse when someone else moves away. You might not realize this, but healing the fear of abandonment often starts with grieving old losses. Sometimes we try to act like the past didn't hurt. We minimize it. We say, it wasn't that bad. But your nervous system remembers what your mind tries to dismiss. Giving yourself permission to acknowledge, yes, that hurt, yes, I felt left, yes, I felt alone, can be powerful. Not to blame anyone, but to validate your experience. Not to blame anyone, but to validate your experience. Because when pain is ignored, it often shows up as fear. Another important step is learning to tolerate emotional discomfort. When someone doesn't reply right away, instead of spiraling, you can gently pause. Notice your breathing. Notice your thoughts. Remind yourself, this is my fear talking, not a fact. Studies suggest that mindfulness can help regulate the nervous system. Even simple grounding techniques, like feeling your feet on the floor or taking slow breath scans, signal safety to your brain. Over time, this builds resilience. Communication also matters. If you struggle with fear of abandonment, you don't have to hide it. In safe relationships, you can express it gently. You can say, sometimes I get anxious when I don't hear back. I'm working on it, but I wanted to be honest. Vulnerability can feel terrifying, but it also creates deeper connection. Of course, not every relationship is healthy. Sometimes fear of abandonment keeps us in situations where we are truly being neglected or mistreated. It's important to differentiate between imagined rejection and real patterns of disrespect. If someone consistently ignores your needs, dismisses your feelings, or threatens to leave as a form of control, that's not your fear talking. That may be a red flag. And while this video can offer insight and comfort, it's not a replacement for professional help. If your fear feels overwhelming, or if it's tied to trauma that feels too heavy to carry alone, reaching out to a therapist or counselor can be a powerful step. You deserve support. Healing doesn't mean you'll never fear abandonment again. It means the fear won't control you. You might still feel a sting when someone pulls away. But instead of spiraling into I'm not enough, you might think, this hurts, but I will be okay. And that's a huge difference. Building a secure relationship with yourself can include small daily practices, keeping promises to yourself, speaking kindly to yourself, pursuing interests that make you feel alive, surrounding yourself with multiple sources of connection so your world doesn't revolve around one person. You might not realize this, but the more balanced your life becomes, a less catastrophic one loss will feel. When your identity includes friendships, passions, goals, and self-respect, abandonment doesn't erase you. It still hurts, but it doesn't define you. If you recognize yourself in this, please know there's nothing wrong with you. The fear of abandonment is a deeply human response to loss. It means you care. It means connection matters to you, and that's beautiful. The goal isn't to stop caring, it's to care without losing yourself. It's to love without clinging, it's to trust without constant fear, and that takes time. So be gentle with yourself. Notice your patterns without shaming them. When fear shows up, instead of saying, why am I like this? Try saying, I see you. I know you're trying to protect me, because that's what this fear has been doing all along. Protecting you from pain. As you learn new ways to feel safe, that protective part can slowly relax. And one day, you may notice that when someone takes a little longer to reply, your heart doesn't race the way it used to. When someone needs space, you don't immediately assume the worst. When a relationship ends, you grieve but you don't collapse. That's growth. That's healing. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. And as we continue talking about this, it's important to slow down and really sit with what this fear feels like in your body. Because fear of abandonment isn't just a thought. It's a full body experience. It might feel like restlessness, like you can't concentrate on anything else until you know everything is okay. It might feel like replaying conversations in your head, searching for the exact moment you messed up. It might feel like overanalyzing someone's tone, their punctuation, their facial expressions. You might not realize this, but your brain is trying to predict danger before it happens. It believes that if it can spot the signs early enough, it can prevent the pain. Here's what psychology says. The brain loves certainty. Uncertainty feels threatening because it leaves room for worst-case scenarios. When someone you care about becomes slightly distant or less responsive, your brain fills in the blanks. And unfortunately, it often fills them in with your deepest fears. They're tired of me. They found someone better. I was too much. But these are interpretations, not facts. If you've ever noticed how quickly your mood can shift based on someone else's behavior, that's not because you're unstable. It's because your sense of safety is linked to their presence. For example, imagine you're in a relationship where everything seems fine. Then, one evening, your partner seems quieter than usual. They say they're just stressed from work, but your mind doesn't settle. You feel the urge to ask again and again. Are you sure you're okay? Are you mad at me? On the surface, it looks like reassurance seeking, but underneath, it's fear. It's your inner voice saying, please don't leave. Please don't pull away. And sometimes you might not even consciously think they'll leave. It's more subtle than that. It's a tension, a readiness, a constant low-level alert. You might not realize this, but living in that state is exhausting. It drains your energy. It makes relationships feel heavy instead of joyful. It turns small misunderstandings into emotional storms. Studies suggest that when someone has experienced inconsistent attachment, their nervous system becomes hypersensitive to relational cues. This means you may detect shifts that others wouldn't even notice. A delayed reply, a shorter hug, a change in routine. Your system reads it as danger. But here's something gentle and important. Heightened sensitivity is not a flaw. It often develops in environments where you had to pay close attention to survive emotionally. Maybe you had to monitor a parent's mood. Maybe love felt unpredictable. Maybe connection felt conditional, so you learned to read the room. The problem is, that skill doesn't turn off automatically when you enter healthier spaces. Another way fear of abandonment shows up is through self-sabotage. You might not realize this, but sometimes people end relationships not because they want to, but because the anxiety becomes unbearable. They might think, if I leave now, at least I won't be blindsided later. Leaving first can feel safer than being left. Or maybe you pick partners who are emotionally unavailable, people who are distant, inconsistent, or hard to reach. And every time they pull away, it confirms your belief that people don't stay. Here's what psychology says about this pattern. We are often drawn to what feels familiar, even if it hurts. If inconsistency feels like love because that's what you grew up with, you might unconsciously gravitate toward it again. It's not because you enjoy pain. It's because your brain equates familiarity with safety. And breaking that cycle requires awareness. You might not realize this, but healing doesn't always mean finding someone who never triggers you. It means learning how to respond differently when you are triggered. For example, when you feel that surge of panic, instead of immediately texting multiple times or withdrawing completely, you can pause. You can ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of right now? Is it truly that they're leaving? Or is it that you're afraid of being alone, of feeling unworthy, of reliving an old wound? When you name the real fear, it becomes less overwhelming. It can also help to build what psychologists call earned security. This means that even if your early attachment wasn't secure, you can develop secure patterns later in life. How? Through consistent relationships, through therapy, through self-reflection, through practicing trust in small, manageable steps. You might start by tolerating small uncertainties without immediately reacting. You might remind yourself of evidence. They've been consistent. They've shown care. One quiet evening doesn't erase everything. Over time, your nervous system learns new data. It learns that distance doesn't always mean abandonment. It learns that conflict doesn't always mean the end. It learns that you can survive discomfort. And here's something that might shift your perspective even deeper. Sometimes fear of abandonment is less about other people and more about abandoning yourself. Think about it. How often do you silence your needs to keep someone happy? How often do you agree to things you don't want? How often do you shrink yourself so you won't be too much? In trying to prevent others from leaving, you may leave yourself. You might not realize this, but self-abandonment can hurt just as much as being left by someone else. Because each time you ignore your feelings, you send yourself the message, my needs don't matter. And that belief feeds the fear. When you start honoring your boundaries, expressing your truth, and choosing relationships that respect you, something changes. You begin to trust yourself, and self-trust is powerful. It tells you, even if someone leaves, I will not leave myself. That doesn't mean it won't hurt. Loss always carries pain, but pain doesn't have to mean devastation. There's also something important to say about grief. If you have been abandoned in the past, whether through breakup, divorce, death, or emotional withdrawal, that grief can linger in ways you might not expect. Sometimes fear of abandonment is unresolved grief, wearing a different mask. Instead of allowing yourself to fully feel the sadness, the anger, the disappointment, you may have buried it. And now, whenever someone gets close, your system whispers, be careful. Last time this ended badly, you might not realize this, but giving yourself space to grieve fully can reduce that fear. When you process loss instead of suppressing it, your brain no longer has to keep sounding the alarm. It learns that you can survive heartbreak, and you have. You're still here. It's also important to talk about self-compassion. When you notice yourself reacting strongly, try not to shame yourself. Shame adds another layer of pain. Instead of thinking, "Why am I so insecure?" you might say, "This part of me is scared." Studies suggest that self-compassion can calm the threat system in the brain. Speaking to yourself kindly activates soothing systems rather than defensive ones. Imagine how you would comfort a friend who feared being left. You wouldn't call them needy or dramatic. You would reassure them. You would remind them of their worth. You deserve that same kindness from yourself. As you grow, you may start to notice subtle shifts. Maybe you don't check your phone as often. Maybe you can sit with uncertainty a little longer. Maybe you choose partners who communicate openly. Maybe you express your fears instead of acting them out. Healing is rarely dramatic. It's quiet, gradual, sometimes almost invisible, and there will be setbacks, moments when the old panic returns. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. If your fear feels deeply rooted, especially if it's connected to trauma, abandonment in childhood, or patterns you can't untangle alone, seeking professional support can make a meaningful difference. Talking to a therapist can provide a safe space to explore these patterns and gently rewire them. There is no shame in needing help. We all need support sometimes. At the end of the day, the fear of abandonment is really about longing. Longing for safety, for consistency, for reassurance, for love that stays. And that longing is not something to be ashamed of. It means your heart is open. The goal isn't to become someone who doesn't care if people leave. The goal is to become someone who knows that, even if they do, your value remains. You are not disposable. You are not replaceable. You are not too much. And you are not alone in feeling this way. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. Have you ever felt that intense panic when a loved one is late coming home, or when a text message goes unanswered for too long? Does the thought of being left alone, physically or emotionally, send a shiver down your spine? If so, you're not alone. Today, we're diving deep into a fear that many of us experience but few of us talk about: the fear of abandonment. This fear isn't just about being physically left behind. It's a profound emotional anxiety that someone you care about will leave you, reject you, or stop loving you. It can make you feel insecure in your relationships, constantly seeking reassurance, or even pushing people away to avoid the potential pain of being left first. It's like walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong move will cause your world to crumble. So where does this powerful fear come from? Often, its roots are planted deep in our past, particularly in our childhood. Experiences like the loss of a parent, neglect, or inconsistent caregiving can create a core belief that people are unreliable and that we are ultimately unlovable. Even as adults, a painful breakup, a sudden ghosting, or a betrayal by a close friend can reopen these old wounds, reinforcing the fear. It's our brain's way of trying to protect us from future hurt by keeping us on high alert for any signs of being left behind. But how does this fear show up in our daily lives? It's not always obvious. You might find yourself being overly accommodating, a people pleaser who sacrifices your own needs to keep others happy. You might struggle with jealousy or possessiveness, constantly checking up on your partner. Or, on the flip side, you might avoid getting close to anyone at all, keeping relationships superficial to protect your heart. Some people jump from one relationship to another, terrified of being alone in the space between. Do any of these behaviors sound familiar? It's important to recognize these patterns not as character flaws, but as coping mechanisms driven by a deep-seated fear. Let's look at a few examples. Imagine Sarah. Her partner is out with friends, and instead of relaxing, she's glued to her phone, her stomach in knots. Every minute they don't reply to her text feels like a confirmation of her worst fears. Or think about Mark, who had a wonderful first date, but instead of feeling excited, he's already convincing himself it won't work out. He starts finding flaws and pulling away, sabotaging the connection before it can even begin. He's choosing the certainty of being alone over the terrifying possibility of being left. These patterns can be exhausting, can't they? They can strain our relationships and, most importantly, they can chip away at our own sense of self-worth. But here is the most important thing I want you to hear today. You can heal from this. Overcoming the fear of abandonment is not about never feeling anxious again. It's about learning to manage that anxiety, to build a strong sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval, and to cultivate healthier, more secure relationships. It's about learning to become your own anchor. So, what are the first steps on this healing journey? The first and most crucial step is awareness. Simply recognizing and naming the fear is incredibly powerful. Acknowledge that this is a part of your experience without judgment. Say to yourself, "I'm feeling afraid of being abandoned right now, and that's okay." This simple act of validation can immediately reduce the fear's power over you. The next step is to challenge the negative thoughts that fuel the fear. When your mind spirals into "they're going to leave me," pause and ask yourself, is that 100% true? What's a more balanced, realistic perspective? Maybe their phone died. Maybe they're busy. Your brain is trying to protect you by jumping to the worst-case scenario, but you can learn to gently guide it back to reality. This is a practice, like building a muscle. It gets easier with time. Building your self-worth is the cornerstone of healing. Start investing in yourself. What are your hobbies? What makes you feel capable and proud? Take a class, finish a project, spend time in nature. The more you build a life that you love, independent of anyone else, the less earth-shattering the thought of someone leaving becomes. You begin to realize that you are whole and complete, all on your own. Your relationships then become a wonderful addition to your life, not the source of your entire identity. Another powerful tool is mindfulness. When you feel that wave of panic rising, bring yourself into the present moment. Focus on your breath. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear. This technique, called grounding, pulls you out of the future-focused anxiety and anchors you in the safety of the here and now. The future is uncertain, but in this very moment, you are okay. It's also vital to learn how to communicate your needs in a healthy way. Instead of acting out of fear, try expressing your feelings directly. You could say something like, "When I don't hear from you for a while, I start to feel anxious because my past experiences make me worry about being left. Could you send a quick text when you know you'll be busy?" This invites your partner to understand and support you rather than pushing them away with suspicion or anger. And finally, please remember that it is a sign of immense strength to ask for help. Working with a therapist or counselor can be transformative. They can provide a safe space to explore the roots of your fear and give you tailored strategies to build secure attachments. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. If you're struggling, reaching out to a mental health professional can be the most compassionate thing you do for yourself. There are also many support groups and online communities where you can connect with others who understand what you're going through. Healing from the fear of abandonment is a journey, not a destination. There will be good days and tough days. Be patient and compassionate with yourself. Every small step you take towards self-awareness, self-love, and healthy communication is a huge victory. You are capable of building secure, loving relationships, starting with the one you have with yourself. You deserve to feel safe, loved, and secure. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this video resonated with you, please consider liking it and sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message. And for more content on emotional well-being and personal growth, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.